Shalom, my friends. Today we are going to talk about a very exciting subject. Most people call it the Shemittah, but the proper pronunciation is Shemittah. Daniel 12, verse 9, and he, the Malach, that is to say the angel, said, "Go your way, Daniel, for the words are shut up and sealed till the time of the end." Abba Father reveals new things to us in his own timing, my friends, and what I'm about to share with you is something that no one knew of until just a few short years ago. Like many things that have been going on, the Father's name, Yahuwah, the Son's name, Yahshua, just those two things alone. It wasn't very long ago that no one was using those names. In the past 5 years, a lot of people are honoring his name. And, a lot of other things, a lot of other information has just been pouring out, like the word said. In the last days, information would be exploding. But this Shemittah, something that's being revealed by Elohim for just such a time as this. Shemittah, let's look at it with the Odiot. Generally, it's meant to release. Strong's number H8059. Their definition is remission of debt, suspension of labor. And, that's because every 7 years is the Shemittah, and those are the things that would go on. But, Deuteronomy chapter 15, verse 1, you can see, at the end of every 7 years, you shall grant a Shemittah, a release. A remission of debt and suspension of labor. But the Odiot reveals much more. It's spelled Shin, Mem, Tet, He. Shin, two front teeth. It has to do with separating things. It has to do with cutting. Cutting your debt out. It's meant as a berachah, a blessing. But when people disobey Abba Father, it's more of a curse, a cutting in that sense. But Shin separates things. Mem, picture of water, and that is the Word. The Word washes us clean. It also has to do with the blood of Yeshua. It has to do with questioning things. It has to do with mightiness, and that, in this case, it would be, Yahweh's berachah on people during the Shemitah. It also has to do with chaos, which has to do with his curse on people when the Shemitah comes who have disobeyed him. Then we have Tet, picture of a basket. We don't see this one as frequently as the others. It has to do with surrounding things, or more so even to contain and store things. It's used to catch fish. Has to do with generosity. And it has to do with giving in secret. And finally, there's He, picture of a man, spiritual man, with his arms raised, being in awe. It has to do with revelation, and it has to do with the fifth dimension of spirit. So Shemitah, every 7th year is a Shemitah. It's a time of rest, Shabbat. Debts are wiped clean. You have to understand slaves in biblical times with Israel. It's not what we understand it should not be even worded as slaves. It should, be more termed as employees, because they weren't slaves the way we know slaves in America, especially. It was their job. And when the Shemitah came, all their debts were wiped out. They were granted freedom, a suspension of their labor, and their employers would heap riches and rewards on them, give them some of everything, that was under that person's house, so to speak. But a very significant thing about this year and next year is the coming Moed, Yom Teruah, and the beginning of this year on Yom Teruah, the beginning of a 7th Shemitah. Yom Teruah next year is the end of the Shemitah. And it's not just, a Shemitah, it happens every 7 years. This is a 7th Shemitah. 7 sevens, it's doubly, that much more important. That is to say that this is the 7th Shemitah from 1967, when Israel took Jerusalem in the Six-Day War, 49 years. And then you have the Yovel, the year of Jubilee. This year and next is extremely significant in terms of Elohim's prophecies and Yahweh's dealings with the world. Mark Biltz calls the Shemitah an economic reset, citing the financial crash of 2001, which occurred exactly on Elul 29, the day before Yom Teruah, a Shemitah. And exactly 7 years later, on the same Elul 29, not the same date on a Gregorian calendar, but the same date on Yahweh's calendar, in 2008, Yom Teruah, another Shemitah, and another even larger financial crash in America. Now, we are entering the beginning of the next Shemitah, this coming Yom Teruah. Couple of weeks, with a solar eclipse coming up on Yom Teruah at the end of a 7th Shemitah in 2015, next year, and that is followed a few weeks later on Tabernacles by the final blood moon of the tetrad we are currently in. A super blood moon, which will be seen in Israel on Tabernacles. For those who say blood moons and eclipses are not specific biblical prophecies, let me point some things out. Genesis chapter 1, verse 14. And Elohim said, let there be lights in the expanse of the Shamayim to separate the day from the night, and let them be signs and tokens of Elohim's provident care, and to mark his Moed, days and years. That is to say, that the sun and the moon are for signs that mark Yahweh's Kodesh appointments with the world. Luke 21, verse 25. And there shall be signs in the sun and moon and stars, and on the earth anxiety of nations, in bewilderment at the roaring of the sea and agitation, men fainting from fear and expectation of what is coming on the earth, for the powers of the Shamayim shall be shaken. But we see there shall be signs in the sun and the moon and the stars. These things are to be watched, my friends. Revelation, that is Chazon, chapter 6, verse 12. And I looked when he opened the 6th seal, and saw a great earthquake came to be, and the sun became black as sackcloth of hair, and the moon became as blood. That's a solar eclipse. going on. Joel chapter 2, verses 30 and 31. And I shall give signs in the Shamayim and upon the earth, blood and fire and columns of smoke. The sun is turned into darkness and the moon into blood before the coming of the great and awesome day of Yahweh. Before the tribulation. We are seeing these signs right now. And at the end of the Shemittah, come 2015, the world begins a new 7-year cycle. Hello? 7-year tribulation? Could late 2015 be the beginning of the trib? I believe the answer to that question is yes. Joel 3, verse 2. Everyone's trying to divide the land of Israel. Look at verses 14 and 15. Let's read it. Joel chapter 3, verse 2. Then I shall gather all Gentiles and bring them down to the valley of Jehoshaphat, and I shall enter into judgment with them there for my people, my inheritance, Yisrael, whom they have scattered among the Gentiles, and they have divided up my land. Everyone's trying to divide the land of Israel. Now let's look at verses 14 and 15. Crowds in the valley of decision, for the day of Yahweh is near in the valley of decision. Sun and moon shall become dark, and stars shall withdraw their brightness. This is where we are today. 4 blood moons warning Israel and the world to not divide Yahweh's land. We're in the midst of a blood moon tetrad. That's 4 blood moons that all happen on Yahweh's Moedim. This year we have blood moons on April 15th and October 8th, Passover and Tabernacles. April 15th's blood moon is past, of course, but look at how wars have ramped up in the Middle East since then. And next year, the 3rd and 4th blood moons will appear on April 4th and September 28th, Passover, Tabernacles. The first Moed and the last Moed of each year, 2 years in a row. I'm not going to go into the blood moons here because my best friend Scotty does such a good job. I'll give you a link at the end of this video to Scotty's teachings. I'll send you over to his website where he's got, a bunch of videos you can watch. He does a great job about the blood moons. And one more thing, according to NASA's reports, over a 5,000-year period, the Earth experiences an average of 1 total lunar eclipse every 18 months. And currently, in one 18-month period, this year and next, we will experience 4 total lunar eclipses, and all of them falling on Yahweh's Moedim, Yahweh's appointed times with mankind. So, let's get back to the Shemitah. Deuteronomy chapter 31, verses 10 through 12. And Moshe commanded them at the end of every 7 years, at the set time of the year of release of debtors from their debts, that's a Shemitah, my friends, at the Moed of Tabernacles, when all Israel comes to appear before Yahweh, your Elohim, in the place which he chooses for his sanctuary, you, in the original Aramaic Hebrew, you refers to the king of Israel, shall read this law before all Israel in their hearing. Assemble the people, men, women, and children, and the stranger, and the sojourner within your towns, that they may hear and learn reverently to fear Yahweh your Elohim, and be watchful to do all the words of this Torah. The significant thing about this is only the men were required to be in Jerusalem for the gathering of tabernacles, but at the end of the 7th year, the Shemittah, everyone had to appear, all those grafted into Israel, and to hear the king read Yahweh's Torah. Might that be what is to be experienced in 2015? I'm just saying. Yeshua HaMashiach Nagid. Nagid, King of Israel. So, the Shemitah is a Sabbath year, a 7th year of rest. And on the last day of the Shemitah, Elul 29, all credit is wiped clean, all debt is wiped away. This is meant to be a beracha. But when a nation turns against Elohim, the Shemitah comes back as a judgment against the nation that is driving Elohim out of its affairs every 7 years. Financial collapses. 1973, a Shemitah year. 1980, a Shemitah year. 1987, a Shemitah year. 2000, a Shemitah year. 2007, a Shemitah year. All in 7-year cycles. Almost all of the greatest crashes happened in a Shemitah year. The 1929 stock market crash, a Shemitah year. The 1937-38 crash, a Shemitah year. The 2007 and 8 recession, a Shemitah year. The Tower of Babel, 2200 BC. The center of power was in Babel. In the Middle Ages, the highest towers were in Europe. The center of power was in Europe. In 1870, a new highest tower appeared in Manhattan. The center of power shifted to America, and it continues to build the world's highest towers as its power keeps growing. 1917, a Shemitah year, a financial crash plus World War I. The collapse of 4 empires. The German, the Russian, the Hungarian, and the Ottoman empires crashed, collapsed. 1938, a Shemitah year. Hitler comes on the world stage, along with the Holocaust. 1945, a Shemitah year. Plans are drawn to build the World Trade Center. The atomic bomb wiped out Hiroshima. 1966, a Shemitah year. They start building the Trade Center. 1973, a Shemitah year. They finish building the World Trade Center. Plus, America decided to legalize the killing of unborn babies, abortion, and America loses the Vietnam War. 2001, a Shemitah year, 9/11. The Twin Towers, the World Trade Center is collapsed, and Wall Street, the stock market, experiences the largest collapse in history at the same time. And now, the new tower they are building was conceived that same year, the year of the Shemitah. 2008, a Shemitah year. Wall Street collapses, and again, it's the largest collapse in history, events getting worse than before. Note, America has been progressing in Yahweh's judgments, and the warnings of the blood moons are converging with the Shemitah and the solar eclipse of Elul 29, 2015, where the Shemitah year wipes out accounts that are built up. It also wipes out towers of pride that have been built up as well. And if the rise of towers marks the rise of a nation, what does the falling of towers mark? The fall of a nation. And America, my friends, has fallen. In 1917, there was the Balfour Declaration giving Israel its land. 1917 was a Jubilee year. That is, the year after a 7th Shemittah. Move 50 years ahead. 7 Shemitahs ahead plus 1 year, you have another Jubilee year. That brings us to 1967, the year after a 7th Shemitah and the restoration of Jerusalem. This September 25th, we enter a new Shemittah which runs until September 13th, 2015. And this is a 7th Shemittah, which means 2016 is a Jubilee year. What will this mean? What events is this going to bring to the world? We are seeing all the signs Yeshua told us about when he said, when you see these things begin to happen, look up, for your redemption is near. We have been seeing a new surge of wars and rumors of wars, earthquakes, and pestilences. I haven't even been reporting on the Ebola virus in my newscasts, but it is exploding with a massive vengeance. The building of the third temple is currently being promoted heavily and is ready to be assembled. The so-called almighty dollar is on the verge of absolute collapse. Weather patterns we've all been familiar with are gone. The religion of Antichrist is spreading throughout the world like a blazing wildfire. The signs in the heavens are all saying that the tribulation is about to begin. And this information about the Shemitah just adds a major confirmation to that. If you're watching this message and you haven't yet prayed about your own salvation, and please understand, it's not just a matter of saying a prayer. It's completely about making Elohim number one on a list of one in your life. Making him first in absolutely everything you do, not second or third in your daily agenda. Please click the link at the end of this video. This may very well be your last call. This is a 7th Shemitah. It's about to begin. It will come to a close in September of next year. When the Shemitah closes is usually when the greatest force is expressed by Elohim. I'm not saying this is it, but I am saying this can be it. And when we see everything that's been going on, as I just elaborated about, it looks like this is it. If you ask me, my friends, this is my personal opinion. I believe the Netchatef is either this year or next year. I think the tribulation will begin late next year or 2016 for sure. A new 7-year cycle begins next year, late in the year. The tribulation is 7 years. We've got 4 blood moons. We've got a super moon. We've got, eclipse. All these things are converging at the same time. I think this is a biblical sign. The tribulation is about to begin. There's only one of 3 scenarios I can see. The Netchatef happens this Yom Teruah in a few weeks. And next year, things get really, really crazy, and the lawless one is revealed, and the tribulation begins. Or, scenario number 2, The Netchatef happens on Yom Teruah next year, and the lawless one is revealed very soon after that, and the tribulation begins. There's a possible third scenario, but I have problems with it, and that would be that the Netchatef, let's say the tribulation begins next year, and the Netchatef happens in less than 4 years. But before the lawless one enters the temple and defiles it, which is in the middle of the tribulation. I see that as kind of a possibility, but I have problems with it. One way that it's a possibility is 2 Thessalonians chapter 2, verse 7 says that he who restrains evil, that's the Ruach, will be taken. Concerning a wedding, that's the Netchatef. And then the lawless one will be revealed. So, we all believe that when the lawless one confirms or strengthens a 7-year peace treaty, then he's revealed. But we all assume that 7-year peace treaty is in alignment with the 7-year tribulation, and there's nothing scriptural to actually nail that down as fact. He could confirm it into the tribulation at some point. I don't know, But one of the main reasons I have a problem with that is Yeshua said, when you see these things begin to happen, look up, your redemption draws near. And he said, pray and ask that you be counted as worthy to escape all these things. Not to escape Yahweh's and Yeshua's wrath, but to escape all these things, these troubles, to escape the tribulation, not his wrath. His wrath is expressed the last half of the tribulation. So I think that we are out of here before the tribulation begins. At any rate, that's just a little personal commentary at the end of this. As always, my friends, I hope and I pray that this teaching about the Shemittah is a beracha to you and to yours. I thank you for your support. Until next week, Abba willing, shalom, my friends. Yeah. Now 2,000 years have gone by, it's another working day. Some would rather let it lie, but the question still remains.